Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to NWA'S. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to sew a single welt pocket on a trouser. And anything I do in this video can be replicated in a senator's wear, a monster jacket to a bomber jacket, or any other outfit that requires a single welt pocket. So I'm going to be making the pocket on a trouser, and if you notice, this is the crotch line, this is the waistline of my trouser, and this is the side line of my trouser. This video is a bonus for you because I'm going to be showing you how to apply the right dart measurement and how to come about every other thing that will make the back of your trouser look very professional. This is a corporate trouser, by the way, and if you want to see the video where we cut this trouser, then check out the link in the description box of this video. You are going to see it right there. So first things first, so the things I need to make this welt pocket is: number one, I need a gum sleeve. Now I already cut out the gum sleeve, and this gum sleeve I'm holding in my hand right now is 2 inches wide and 7.5 inches long. 2 inches wide, 7.5 inches long. The bigger one is 3.5 inches wide, 8 inches long. And then of course I need the lining, I need the pocket facing, and I need a little bit of fabric that I'm going to be creating the pocket on, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is to apply the dart on the pocket. Like I said, this video is a bonus for you because you are going to understand how to come about the dart of your trouser. Now the dart of a trouser is 3 inches long, and yeah, it's just 3 inches long, right? The dart of a trouser is 3 inches long. So to do that, what I'm going to do is to come by the side line of my trouser and come down by 3 inches. From the waistline of my trouser, I am going to come down by 3 inches. So from that point, I am going to mark my chalk at 3 inches. Now that is the length of my dart. To come about the pocket, what I'm going to do is at that 3 inches line, I'm going to come in by 2 inches. At that 3 inches line, I'm going to come in by 2 inches. That is the distance between the side of my pocket to my pocket. Rather, that is the distance between the side of my trouser to my pocket. Now from that line I just marked, I'm going to determine the width of my pocket. Now the width of this pocket is going to be 5.5, and that is pretty standard for a matured male, 5.5 inches. So I'm going to mark my chalk at 5.5 inches, right? And then the next thing I'm going to do is to divide the pocket by 2. So simply to do that, I'm just going to break my tape at the 5.5 inches point. So when I break my tape, or when I fold my tape into 2, you can see it's already creating a midpoint, and that midpoint is 2 3/4 inches. So I'm going to mark my chalk at 2 3/4 inches, and I'm going to use my ruler to rule it to the waistline of my trouser. I hope you do understand. I'm going to use my ruler to rule it up to that point. Now that is the midpoint of my trouser, and that is where the dart is going to come from. So the next thing I'm going to do is to notch it a bit with my scissors, right? Now after notching it a bit, what I'm going to do, remember the length of the dart is 3 inches, so I'm going to mark my chalk at 3 inches line. So that is where my dart is going to stop at. I'm going to sew from there and stop there. I'm going to just come in by the sewing, or the stitch is just going to be 1/4 inch wide, and I'm going to sew it downwards to where the dart is stopping. I'm not going to sew it more than that line because I do not want it to be too much. Remember, this is 2 sides of a trouser, right? Like this is the 2 sides of the back of the trouser. So whatever I do on this side can be replicated on the other side of your trouser. After folding it in like so, the next thing I'm going to do is to iron it out. So I'm going to fold it and I'm going to iron it on that dart line. I am going to fold it and I'm going to iron it on that dart line, just like I am doing. Now after ironing it out, I am going to come in by 1/4 inch. As you can see, my ruler is stopping 1/4 inch, and I'm going to rule the line to my dart line. So that is where my stitches is going to follow. Like I said, whatever I do on this part can be replicated on the other side of your trouser. The next thing is to take it to the machine and sew it, and I'm going to show you. After sewing it in on the machine, the next thing I'm going to do is to iron out the dart completely. As you can see. So what I'm going to do is to use my iron. It's pretty hot at the moment, so what I'm going to do is to use my iron and press it out. You want to take your time at this point because you do not want the back part of your trouser or your welt pocket looking very fluffy or puffy or unprofessional, right? So you want to take your time at this point and iron it out. Now after ironing it, you can see how it is coming out. The next thing to do would be to use the gum stick and cover this part of my pocket. Like I said, this gum stick is 8 inches long and 3.5 inches wide. It is 8 inches long and it is 3.5 inches wide, as you can see. Now to determine this, all you need to do is to add 3 inches to your initial pocket measurement. Now if you remember, the initial pocket measurement is 5.5 inches and then I added 3 inches. Now to place this pocket, what I'm going to do is to come down at that waistline. I'm going to come down by 1 inch, as I just did. I'm going to come down by 1 inch. The next thing to do would be to divide this what do they call it, this gum stick into 2. As you can see, it is 8 inches long and it is 3.5 inches wide, so it is to divide it by 2. Simply to divide it, the simplest way is just to fold it into 2 and notch it on both sides like I am doing. It is to fold it into 2 and notch it on both sides like I am doing. Now like I said, I came down from the waistline by 1 inches. I hope you can see the chalk. I came down from the waistline by 1 inches and I divided the gum stick into 2. Now the next thing I'm going to do is that the gum stick is going to start from that 1 inch point downwards. The gum stick is going to start from that 1 inch point downwards. So what I'm going to do is to place that center line on the line of my dart. The notch I just made on the gum stick, right, it is going to rest directly on the line of my dart like so. Now after placing it like so, the next thing I'm going to do is to iron it out with my iron. I'm going to make sure that it is gumming correctly. I do not want it to start rising like the naira when I start sewing, right? So I'm going to use a pretty hot iron, or I'm going to increase the hotness of my iron and iron it out like so. If you noticed, I already weaved this trouser. I already weaved out the sides of the trouser that I'm going to be sewing on. So the next thing I'm going to do is to measure my dart. Remember, the dart is 3 inches long. It is 3 inches long, and as you can see, that is where my dart stopped. From the marking in the beginning, you should already know that that is where the dart would stop. So that is where my pocket is going to sit on. Now that aside, the next thing I'm going to be doing is to gum the gum stick on top of the fabric I'm going to be using for the pocket. It is to gum the gum stick on top of the fabric I'm going to be using for the pocket. Now this gum stick is 7.5 inches long, then it is 2 inches wide. To arrive at this measurement, all you need to do is to add 2 inches to the width of your pocket. It is to add 2 inches to the width of your pocket. Now if your pocket is 6 inches, you add 2 inches, that means the length of your gum stick is going to be 8 inches. For this pocket, it is 5.5 inches wide, right? 5.5 inches plus 2 inches is going to give you 7.5 inches. So what you want to do when cutting out the gum stick for your pocket, this gum stick, it is to add 2 inches to the width of your pocket. It is to add 2 inches. I hope you understand that part. So the next thing I'm going to do is to gum it on the fabric that I'm going to be using to create the pocket. Now if you're using a different fabric to create the pocket, no problem. The thing you need to do is to gum it like so. From where the gum stick is beginning, from the point the gum stick is beginning, it is going to be 4 inches long. From where the gum stick is beginning, it is going to be 4 inches long. So I'm going to mark my chalk at 4 inch across. Now I am marking it at 4 inch because I am going to be using a lining to complete the rest part of my pocket. If I was not using a lining, then the length of this one would be 16 inches. But since I am using a lining, the length of this part is 4 inches long. If I was not using a lining again, it would be 16 inches, but since I am using a lining, it is 4 inches. After gumming, and I'm using a lining because I always enjoy seeing a different fabric inside of my trouser. I do not like using the fabric of the trouser to cut the pocket. It seems somehow to me. I don't know. Do you find it somehow? Do you find it odd using the material or the fabric of your trouser or of your clothing to make the pocket? I find it odd. I rather use a facing and a lining. Right now, the next thing I'm going to do is to gum this one too. Now after gumming this one, what I'm going to do is just to cut it on that line. I am not going to measure out 4 inches because this part of the pocket is simply of no use. When we are sewing it, you are going to understand. Oops, my iron is as hot as hell, right? It is just too hot. So like I said, what I'm going to do is to cut out this gum stiff exactly on the line, like so. The next thing to do when sewing a welt pocket is to determine the width of the pocket or how fat you want the pocket to be. Now for me, I want this pocket to be ½ inches wide. I want it to be ½ an inch wide. So what I'm going to be doing is to be marking ½ inch on both sides. If you divide ½ inch by 2, it is going to give you ½ inch. So I'm going to be marking ½ inch on this side, and I'm going to be marking ½ inch on the other part of this gum stiff. Now if you're getting value from this video, then do let us know in the comment section below what other type of video do you also want us to make. We are going to be dropping them as soon as we get your answers, right? So I'm going to be marking ½ inch on this side and ½ inch on the other side. Now the next thing I'm going to be doing is to really line to merge all lines. It is to really line across all dotting, or to dot my I's and cross my T's like those people in school say, right? So yes, and if you've not subscribed to this channel, to NWA'S Wonder, then Guinea Kinech, what are you waiting for? We have tons of amazing tutorials. All you have to do is to go through our channel and see how dedicated we are to helping you get better in your fashion journey. So subscribe to this channel and turn on the bell icon just so you don't get to miss any video we drop on this space, right? Now after marking all the lines across, after ruling the line across rather, the next thing I'm going to be doing is to be applying the measurement of my pocket. First, you want to measure this one to make sure it is giving you ½ inch. So as you can see, from this line to this line is giving me exactly ½ inch. I hope you arrived at the same results on the pocket you are making while watching this video, right? And if you're not making a pocket, I hope you arrive at the same results when you start making yours. Now the next thing to do would be to apply the length of my pocket. So I'm going to come in by 1 inch on the edge of the pocket like I am doing now. I'm going to come in by 1 inch, and then I'm going to place the width of the pocket. If you remember correctly, the width of this pocket is 5.5, right? The width of this pocket is 5.5 like we marked on the trouser. So I'm going to be marking my biro on 5.5, right? I'm going to be marking my biro on 5.5, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the other part of the gum stiff. So I'm going to be marking my pen at 5.5 inches line. Now the next thing to do would be to determine the center of my pocket. Now the midpoint of my pocket is 2 3/4. By doing that, or by breaking the tape, you already see that it is 2 3/4. So I'm going to be marking my biro or my pen on 2 3/4 line, and I'm going to be doing the same thing for the other part of the gum stiff. I'm going to be marking my pen on the 2 3/4 line like so. I'm going to try to make them visible just so you can see. I hope you can see. Now the next thing I'm going to do, okay, making them visible just so you can see. Now if you want to see the video where we cut this trouser that we're sewing right now, all you need to do is to check the link in the description box of this video, and it is going to be right there waiting for you. Now the next thing to do would be to bring out the trouser. If you're making this pocket on a senator's, then bring out the senator's wear. If you're making it on a bomber jacket, bring out the bomber jacket. If you're making it on a trouser, bring out the trouser. Now after bringing it out, what I'm going to do is to pin the pocket on top of the trouser. Now this is where the center line is going to be resting. It is going to be resting directly on the dart. The midpoint of my pocket, or of my gum stick is going to be resting directly on the dart. I hope you can see it is going to be resting directly on the dart. Now from the waistline to where my pocket is going to stop is going to give me 3 inches. From the waistline to where my pocket is stopping is going to give me 3 inches. Nothing more, nothing less. If you remember, the length of our dart is 3 inches, and that is what we are following. So from the waistline to that biro marking or to that pen marking on my pocket is going to give me 3 inches. Now notice the one I'm using for the down, and notice the part of the pocket I'm going to place on top. The one I'm using for the down is the one that is 4 inches long, right? Is the one that is 4 inches long. So from that point, from the waistline to that biro marking is going to give me 3 inches, and then I'm going to pin it down because I do not want it to move when I am sewing it. I am going to pin it down, making sure it's balanced so that when I am sewing it, it is not going to move. Now 5.5, like I said, is standard. It is pretty standard for a matured male because my hand, or whoever hand out there, is not that wide, right? If the person's hand is too wide, then you can use 6 inches. So from that point to that point is going to give me 3 inches. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to pin it down on the trouser. I had to get my magnet for that purpose, so I pinned it down like so, and then I took another pin and then I pinned it down again like so. After pinning it down, the next thing I'm going to do is just to pick the one on top and place it, right? Making sure that it is not slant or bent, it is straight. Right now notice the one I used on top, it is the smaller one I used on the top and the bigger one I used below. So I'm going to pin it down, making sure that all my lines are margin, making sure that all my lines are aligning correctly. You can see that the center line is aligning, you can see that the side line and the side line are aligning correctly, right? So I'm going to use my pin to pin it down, and then I'm going to take it to the machine to sew it. Now to sew it on the machine, what I'm going to do is to sew on this straight line, and then I'm going to sew from that point to that point, sewing from this point to this point, and then from this point to this point, right? So I'm going to be sewing it on the straight line, and I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to bring up my machine, and I'm going to sew it on the next one. So from that point to that point, and then from that point to that point on that straight line. After sewing it on the straight line, the next thing I'm going to do, and this is the most important part of a welt pocket, is to cut through. Now as you can see, the pocket of my stitches is resting directly on the middle of the gum stick behind the trouser, right? It is not resting on the side, it is resting directly on the middle, and that is because I do not want it to rest on the fabric directly, because the fabric is a stretchy one. So you should always use a gum stick when making a welt pocket, for the reasons because the gum stick or the fabric might be a stretchy one. So the next thing I'm going to do is to cut through in the center, but before that I'm going to show you how I'm going to cut. Now I'm going to come in by 1/2 inch from that straight line. Now from that line I'm going to come in by 1/2 inch, right? From that line I am going to come in by 1/2 inch on both sides, and I'm going to come in by 1/2 inch on this line, right? Now after making my pen on that line, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to cut through, and I'm going to stop there and slant it, and I'm going to stop there and slant it. So I'm going to cut through from here to here, and I'm going to cut from here to here, right? So pay close attention, because this is the most important part of a welt pocket. If you miss this part, you've missed literally everything. There's no redemption when your foundation is faulty. And this is pretty much the foundation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut slowly. There's no need to rush it. When I reach here, or when I get to this point that I just marked, this 1/2 inch line, I'm going to curve it and cut it to where my stitches started, right? I'm going to cut it and curve it to where my stitch started. I'm going to do the same thing for the back, for the other parts of this pocket. So when I stop here slowly, you do not have to rush this part. I'm going to raise my scissors, and I'm going to cut it to where my stitches started, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other side of this pocket. So you have to take your time to make sure that you do not exceed these lines on the trouser, because when you exceed it, you end up creating a dent on the trouser, and you have to start patching and doing all sorts of things to redeem it. So the next thing I'm going to do is to turn it in. The next thing I'm going to do is to turn my pocket in, and I'm almost done with this pocket. But before turning it in, what I'm going to do first of all is to attach my lining. Now if you're using a lining like I am using, or if you're using a pocketing or a different fabric, then this is how to attach your lining or your pocketing or your different fabric on a welt pocket for a trouser. But if you're not using a lining, if you're using the same fabric, then all you need to do is just to turn it in at this point. But if you are using a lining, all you have to do is to sew straight, and then you top stitch it and sew it again. So the way I am pinning it now is just for you to know that I have to sew it on a straight line. Right, now I'm going to run a stitch on that straight line, and then I am going to turn it, and I'm going to sew it again. When I'm done top stitching it, what I'm going to do next is to iron it out, and then I am done with it. After ironing it out, I'm now going to turn it in. So using my iron, I am going to iron it out just so it rests well, like a pillow or something. I don't know. The next thing I'm going to do is to turn it inside. So turning it in, I'm just going to fold it on this point and on this point, and then I'm going to push it inside the trouser. And I'm going to do the same thing for this, but I'm going to fold it in like so, and I'm going to get everything, and then I'm going to push it inside. Careful though, because I do not want to tear or create a dent on the main trouser. Right, I do not want to tear or create a dent. After that, what I'm going to do is to iron it out and then stitch it. Now, since it's a single welt pocket, it is not a double welt pocket, it is a single welt pocket. Since it is a single welt pocket, what I'm going to do is to fold this one upwards. The one that is up is to fold it upwards, making sure it is aligned and it is not showing any part of it outside. Right, and then I'm going to iron it out. It is to fold the part carrying the gum sleeve upwards, and then the next thing I'm going to do is to fold this part like so, making sure it is covering the hole. Now you can see a hole is there, a void that needs to be filled. So I'm going to raise this one up, and I'm going to fold it, making sure it is covering that hole or filling that void like this. Right, now after making sure it is covering that hole perfectly, the next thing I'm going to do is to iron it out too, like I did for the top one. What I'm going to do next is to turn it like this, and then I'm going to stitch it from the inside. Now I do not want any stitch to show itself on the outside of this welt pocket. So what I'm going to do is to push in this one and to push in this one. Now if you do not push it in, it is going to be very, very dirty. It is going to look very, very dirty. So what I'm going to do is to push it in, and then I'm going to top stitch on top of the two of them. Now I'm going to top stitch on this one. I'm going to top stitch on this one, just a loose stitch. I'm going to run a loose stitch on that one, making sure I am not stitching the main trouser itself. I am going to be running the loose stitch on top of this one on that line, and I'm going to be running a loose stitch on top of this one on that line. I am done running a loose stitch. As you can see, I just ran a loose stitch on here and a loose stitch on here, and as you can see, the pocket is already coming out. The pocket is almost ready and my hand is fitting in perfectly. In fact, there's enough space for me to dip in my hand and bring out something that I left inside the pocket. So what I'm going to be doing next is to iron it out, and it's at this point that you get to use all the iron you want. So even though you're making this single welt pocket on a monster jacket, on a senators, please do take your time at this point to iron it out like I am doing. Now the next thing to do would be to determine the length of the pocket or the depth of the pocket. Like, you know, a back pocket is not supposed to be too deep, because if it is too deep, you risk letting it fall below your butt or your backside. So you want it directly on your backside, right? You want it directly on your butt. So from that point, from that center line, what I'm going to be marking now my pen at is 6.5 inches. Right, I'm going to mark my pen at 6.5 inches there, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other part, or for the other part of the welt pocket. So from that center line, I'm going to mark my chalk or my pen at 6.5 inches. Now after that, what I'm going to do is to notch it at that point, and then I'm going to notch it at that 6.5 inches point on both sides. Right, like I said, this is the depth of the pocket. If you want yours, I don't even know, you should not want yours to be deeper than this. This is the deepest it should go, right? So that your wallet could fit in perfectly, your phone could fit in perfectly. So this is 6.5 from that point. So what I'm going to do is to fold it into that notched part, and then I'm going to iron it out. Is to fold it in, and then I'm going to be ironing it out. So I'm just going to spray a bit of water and I'm going to iron it out like so. Now if you're getting value from this video, subscribe to this channel, turn on the bell icon so you get to see when we upload videos like this one and many more. Right, subscribe, turn on the bell icon, share this video with your friends across YouTube, WhatsApp and Facebook, just so we get to reach more people across the web. I really appreciate. Thank you to those that shared our previous video. Thank you so much. Now next thing I'm going to be doing, because I use the lining, I'm going to be creating a facing. Now if you use the same fabric, you do not need to place a facing, but I need a facing because I use the lining and I need it to create a false face for my pocket. So what I'm going to be doing is to mark my pen inside the pocket. As you can see, that is where my biro is showing at. I marked my pen inside the pocket, and the next thing I'm going to be doing is to use this facing to cover that biro marking. Now this facing is 3 inches wide and it is 7.5 inches long. Oh, it is even 3.5 inches wide and it is 7.5 inches long. As you can see, I just used it to cover the marking of the pen on my lining. So what I'm going to do is to pin it down, and I'm going to take it to the machine and I'm going to sew it. So I'm going to run a loose stitch on it and I'm going to show you. This is because I use the lining for creating this pocket, right? So after sewing on the facing, what I'm going to do is just to place my pocket, making sure that the facing is covering any hint of a lining inside the pocket like I am doing. Then I'm going to pin it down and I'm going to run a straight stitch on it. Now after pinning it down, what I'm going to do is to sew straight on it. As you can see, I am folding it, or the folding of the pocket is directly the length of the depth of the pocket, which is 6.5, right? It is 6.5. So what I'm going to do is to run a straight stitch from there to here, and then I'm going to run the stitch from there to here, and then I'm going to run the stitch from there to here. So running a stitch up, and I'm going to corner, I'm going to run the stitch like so, and then I'm going to come down and run a straight stitch like so. Right, that is just that for a welt pocket. Now after stitching it, I'm going to trim it out and I'm going to weave it before top stitching. Stay tuned. As you can see, all I did was to run a stitch from there to here, and I ran a stitch at the top, and then I ran a stitch at the other side. And next thing I'm going to be doing is to use my scissors to trim it out as much as I can. right? And after sewing your pocket, you do not want all this extra allowance inside of your trouser or your senator's wear or your monster jacket or your gown or your palazzo, whatever it is. You do not want as much pieces. You do not want all these pieces inside, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out as much pieces or as much excessive allowance as I can, right? I'm calling it pieces because that's what we called it in a local tailor's shop, understand? So after cutting it out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it to the weaving machine and I'm going to weave it, and then I'm going to come back and show you. But before then, let's test the pocket and see. Now I'm dipping my hand into the pocket. As you can see, it is just the right depth for a pocket. Now you do not want it to be deeper than this. It is 6.5 inches, not deeper and not shallower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it to the weaving machine, I'm going to weave it, and then I'm going to top stitch it and show you. So before top stitching it, after weaving it, before top stitching it, what I'm going to do is to iron it out again. Before top stitching it, I want to iron it out again, just so that it is looking as professional and as neat as humanly possible. Tell me, don't these pockets look neat? Don't it look professional? I hope you got the same results, and if you did, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment for us so we get to know that we are building a community and creating helpful content for people. After running a loose stitch at the top, now what I'm going to be doing is to cut out the excessive allowance at the top. Now that is where my waistband is going to be resting on. Now if you got value from this video, let us know in the comment section below. Guys, what other video do you want us to make? I've been asking throughout the course of this video, right? Do let us know. Did you enjoy this video? Help us by sharing it with your friends and loved ones across the web, just so we get to reach more people across the internet. My name is Kosima, and this is NWA'S Wonder. It's so amazing having all of you watch our content and learn from it weekly. We appreciate everybody that has been subscribing and sharing and liking and commenting. May the Most High bless you. Now we will see you next one, and until then, bye bye.